But essentially, what you were told is the current president of the United States has run in 3 election cycles. 2 of them were just fine. The 2 he won. The one he lost was somehow rigged and fixed. Guess who was president for the one that he lost? So he's asking you to believe that as long as someone else runs the electoral process, it's all good, but he's far too incompetent to do it. And his solution to that is that he should be able to run this one. Don't ask a lot of questions because it falls apart really quick and it'll make your head hurt. But here's the first and the most important message that I want you to take away from today as far as my conversation. Nothing about voting in Illinois has changed in advance of the midterm elections. Nothing. What we have been treated to is months and months, and now in the last few days amping up, of pressure from this administration to try to federalize our elections. None of that is actually working. But let me talk for just a few minutes so you understand exactly what it is that they've attempted to do, and I think what we're going to see for the next few months. So the first thing is, of course, that the president has issued a number of executive orders. You know how that works. The president sits at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, and when he isn't falling asleep, he signs a document and then he holds it up like a first grader really proud of his art project. You've all seen these things. And by the way, I'm sorry, this has like been bugging me of late. Who the hell's signature is he signing? Because there's a lot of letters for Trump. You know, ever notice that? Like, I have a really sloppy signature for Yonka, but you know, I mean, my gosh. But the point is, you know, you get me riffing on a Sunday afternoon. This could get ugly before it's over. But he signed these series of executive orders. The first executive order he signed declared an end to voting by mail, right? He said that you could use vote by mail, but only in certain circumstances and only when the votes were actually received and counted by election day. But that's not the way state law works. And by the way, the states and local governments are in charge of our election process. When that executive order was blocked, the president and his party, the Republican National Committee, attempted to use the courts and were in the process of using the courts in order to block that voting. And they actually took a case to the Supreme Court of the United States. And in one of the few decisions at the end of the term that went well for us, the Supreme Court actually found that the states can run their own electoral process and they could receive votes for whatever the prescribed period of time was after Election Day. In Illinois, that happens to be 14 days. But we need to make sure that our votes are postmarked by Election Day. And we know that the United States Postal Service may not be our friends where that's concerned. So you need, if you're going to use mail voting, to make sure you get that in on time. When that executive order got blocked, the president issued a second executive order. And in that executive order, the president declared that the United States Postal Service was somehow going to become an agent of the electoral process in this country, despite not having anything to do with it. And in fact, again, in opposition to federal law, that the United States Postal Service was going to have a master list of all eligible voters in the country that was going to be put together by the Department of Homeland Security, which has nothing to do with elections in this country. This would be funny if it weren't happening, right? And that compare a mail-in ballot that was being sent out to the list that was comprised by the Department of Homeland Security, and if the person's name wasn't on there, they wouldn't send out the ballot. Well, it took courts about a week to strike that down as well. Because, of course, again, they have nothing to do with the electoral process in this country. But the president is undaunted. He's undaunted by all of this. He's undaunted by reality. And so in recognizing that maybe he needed something a little bit in addition to the executive orders, he started to propose and push the so-called Save America Act. The Save America Act is the president's answer to unknown problems with voting, including the problem, according to him, of non-citizens voting, of which even the Brookings Institute, which is the progenitor of Project 2025, actually says there are less than a handful of cases of non-citizens attempting to vote that they can identify from the last 25 years. So in response to that, the president has pushed the Save America Act, which, as you know, would require people to engage in proof of citizenship in order to vote. You would either have to have a passport or you would have to have a stamped, valid, original birth certificate. Of course, we know that both of those documents can be very expensive to get. A passport, for those of us who are fortunate enough to carry one, we know that that's an expensive, arduous process to do. And of course, in some jurisdictions around the country, it is sometimes complicated to get a birth certificate because as jurisdictions try to protect against identity theft, they have made people show up in person, pay fees, engage in a number of other proofs in order to get that birth certificate, which can make that arduous. That is a poll tax, right? That means you would have to pay that poll tax in order to be able to register and to vote. The second thing that the SAVE Act does is it says that the name on your voter registration list record file has to exactly match the name that is either on your passport or on your original. And of course, we know that millions of people across the country change their names either because of marriage or adoption or because of a step-parent or for other reasons without changing their original birth certificate. And so that might put at risk millions of people. I think the estimate is up to 5 million people in Illinois. There are an additional 5 million people, by the way, in Illinois who do not have access to a passport. All of those people would be at risk either A, of not being able to register to vote, or if their registration was challenged, not being able to demonstrate that they were eligible to be able to vote in this country. The Save America Act, by the way, just so you recognize how important and critical to voting it is, has another provision, or two other provisions I just want to mention. The first is it contains in it a federal criminal statute that would hold accountable anybody who registered someone who was not eligible and threaten them with up to 5 years in a federal prison. Just simply think someone is questionable as to whether or not they're eligible to vote would be to not register them rather than to register them. And by the way, here's the thing. Sometimes people will say to me, or I'll get that question from the media where they'll say to me, hey, I just want to play devil's advocate for a minute, right? I love that one, And you'll get that question, it'll be, hey, so who doesn't have an ID? Like, how does this work? I would just remind everybody of two things. First of all, if you go back to the original voter ID case that was up before the Supreme Court of the United States that came out of Indiana, a case that the ACLU of Indiana argued. In his opinion upholding voter ID laws, Justice Scalia recognized that anywhere between 7 and 10% of people in this country do not have a valid state-issued identification card. But the justice thought that was just fine to protect election security. And so what we have now in this country is a system where, for example, in the state of Texas, You can vote using your firearms ownership card, but you cannot vote using your ID from the University of Texas at Austin. I wonder what's the difference between those two populations. Just speculating. But the other part of this is we actually know how this would work. A few years ago in the state of Kansas, under the leadership of their Secretary of State, Chris Kobach, the state of Kansas adopted effectively the SAVE Act at the state level. And over the 18 months that it was in effect before it was struck down by a federal court for violating the Kansas Constitution, 30% of people who attempted to register and who were eligible were denied the ability to register. We've run the experiment and we know what the outcome is. Think about what that looks like at a national level. Think about what that would look like everywhere else. And I just can't help and resist. Here's how bad the President of the United States wants to protect voting in this country. The Save America Act is currently before Congress, contains in it another provision which would bar all transgender females from participating in athletics across the country. I know that I will feel safer in voting when we finally have driven those 3 poor young women across the state of Illinois out of athletics. It is simply not rational. This is a desperate president. This is a desperate president who knows and fears most of all a change in the leadership in Congress that will hold him accountable for the chaos and the corruption and the confusion that he has sought over the last couple of years. Imagine a Congress in which there are actually hearings about ICE murdering people in our streets. Imagine a Congress in which somebody actually asks the question how it is that the President of the United States can employ someone to run his teleprompter who makes $100,000 in bets on Kalshi. Imagine a Congress in which people actually ask the questions about the president's son's investments in defense companies that get contracts from the Pentagon. That is what the president fears, not voter fraud. And so it is time for us to do 2 things. First of all, it is time for us to push back against this misinformation. And it is time for us to vote. So I want to just share with you, I think, a few simple steps that all of us can take, and you're going to hear much more about detailed steps, but a simple steps that we can take between now and Election Day. The first is find reliable sources and only believe, repeat, and respond to those sources. It turns out that a guy with 10 followers on Twitter may not actually know what's going on. Just a thought, right? The second thing is, and you'll hear much more about this, but make a plan to vote. Share that plan with your family and your friends and encourage them to do the same. Third, figure out how you can participate in this system. Whether it's by being an election judge, whether it's by participating in a campaign either locally or somewhere else that's in a place where there's a tight race that's going on, or to serve as a monitor someplace else if you think that that's a better use of your time. Find those places and be part of that program. And third, be prepared to respond for anything that this administration does. You know, at the ACLU, we've been working with our friends and colleagues at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, a number of other legal organizations from across the country and Illinois, as well as people who are, law firms who are volunteering their time to help us. We have draft papers ready to go if we see ICE or if we see individuals with firearms show up at polls and try to coerce people. So be on the lookout for what you see, for seeing that, and know where to go, whether it's reaching out to the ACLU, whether it's calling the Election Protection Hotline at 866-R-VOTE. That's 866-ORU-VOTE. And I only had to rehearse that 5 times to know how to spell it. A little proud of myself today. But know that number and keep it close by. If you see something, report it. Let people know in terms of what's happening, and gather with others in your community. Again, not to repeat false information or rumors, but look for details and facts and what's actually happening on the ground. That's what we can do to counteract what is going to be a mountain of misinformation between now and Election Day. You know, these are, I can't, you know, I've reached a certain gentle age. And I never really thought that this would be where I would get to. And I think a lot these days about what it means to be an American. I certainly thought a lot about it in the last few weeks with the 250th anniversary of our country. Putting aside the Declaration and that anniversary, I continue to be moved by what I think are still the most beautiful words in the English language that were not written by William Shakespeare. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union. 2 things about that. First, we were never promised perfection. We were only promised the tools to work for it. But the people but the work has to be done by we the people. There is nobody showing up to save us except us. There will be no great speech from a candidate over the next several weeks that will put everything magically in place. That work is up to us. That work and where we get out of this will depend not on anybody else, but on what each of us is committed to do over these next few weeks to protect our elections and to push back against this scheme to steal and rig an election in order to evade any kind of accountability. You know, I still believe there are more of us than there are of them. I think that's what this is about. I think what it's about is that they figured out that what they're doing, they cannot sell. It turns out people, as I say, people are still upset that their president made $2 billion last year sitting in the Oval Office while they struggled to pay for their grocery bill. It turns out that they thought that eliminating or reducing, crime or violence in their neighborhood wouldn't mean masked, armed, untrained thugs running through their neighborhood shooting people. And it turns out that the people that this president and his acolytes kept pointing to aren't the real problems in their lives. That those come from somewhere else. And it turns out that people are ready to reject this and work together, and that's why they're so scared. God, this is a moment I would love, if I could hear one speech, to hear from John Lewis. This would be a moment to really hear the connection from that bridge in Selma to today. We are all part of a great tradition. We are part of work that began before 1776 and will continue long after we're gone from this work. But this is our moment to do these things, and taking these simple steps right now in the next few weeks to be ready to vote and then to be ready to respond after the election is the thing that we have to do. Thank you all very much. I'm going to turn this over to Ann and our friends for the rest of this session. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Is this working okay? Yes? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ed, not only for reminding us of all the nonsense that's out there, the misinformation and the disinformation that we must be aware of, but also strengthening us in our belief that the protections for us as individuals and us as a state exist and are robust, and all it takes is for us to make sure we use them. We'll have time after we've spoken a bit more about what an action plan for voting looks like to bring Ed back, and all of us will be available for questions that you might have of any of us. Okay? So, a few more details about, to piggyback on what Ed said, one of the best things that we can do as individuals is to create an action plan for voting. Now, my guess is many of the people sitting here in this room are longtime voters. Am I right? Yep, great. But if you're like me, do I sit there and try to figure out, okay, what is my actual plan for voting? How am I going to make this happen? I don't do that probably as well as I should, but I know I'm going to do it this time. So what we want to talk about today is how to do that, because creating a plan to actually vote gives us a sense of agency. It empowers us. Because what it says is no matter what is floating around in the environment, we have a plan and we have the ability to make it work. That's why we gave you a handout and a pen for those people who don't normally carry pens, for you to fill out today as we go through this so that you'll have it to take with you after today's session. We thought it would be a useful reminder to you, but also be a way for you to share that information with others, which is really the second action step, which is, yes, be sure what I'm going to do to vote, but also how am I going to share this information with others, with my family, with my friends, and with my neighbors. So that's the goal of our time with you this afternoon. But before we do that, we wanted to take a look at some things that I think Ed alluded to also, which is we don't want to share misinformation. We want to make really sure that we know how elections actually operate in Illinois. So I have a few questions for you. Don't know exactly where to stand here, but we'll find out. Okay, so everybody, which of these offices will be on your ballot on November 3rd? Oh, I hear a D. What else do I hear? Anybody else other than D? Well, guess what? Give yourselves a hand. You are correct. Which is really important because who is not on the ballot? President. And what normally happens in a midterm election, which this one is that people don't turn out because the president's name's not on the ballot. We don't have a plethora of ads about everybody. And they think, oh, this really doesn't matter. But you know what? It does. Because everybody on your ballot will be the offices that will make the laws or the decisions under which we will live for the next few years. For that reason, voting in the midterm is extremely important. How about the next question? So why do you think people in Champaign County often decide to vote in person but early? I hear a chorus of D's, especially from that part of the room. And guess what? You're all right again. Yes. People have different reasons for wanting to vote early. Of course, we do have people, too, who really feel empowered to vote on Election Day because they've always done that, and that's a cool thing, too. But voting early, the one big advantage in voting early is flexibility. If you're a caregiver for a child or an elderly parent, if you've got a job where you can't really take a whole bunch of time off, early voting gives you many more options, including weekend, not just 9 to 5, where you too can vote easily and quickly because the lines are shorter. So the many reasons for people to vote early. Okay, Terry, how about our third question? Take a look at this one. Which is true about voting in Illinois? How many say A? Got any votes for A? How about B? Oh, people are silent. How about C? No. How about D? No. The correct answer, my friends, is C. Can we go back to that screen, Terry, for a minute? In Illinois, as in every state in the country, college students get to choose whether they're going to use their address at their college as their voting address or their home address. They can only choose one, but they do have that choice. So what's incorrect about the other choices? Real quick, do you have to provide a reason to request a mail ballot in Illinois? No. Answer is no. You used to decades ago, but not now. In some states you do, and they're very limited, but not in Illinois. Any eligible registered voter may request a mail ballot either for one election or for every future election. How about B? There is an inaccuracy in B. That word received, thank you very much, whoever said that. Your mail ballot, as Ed reminded us, must be postmarked on or before Election Day. In Illinois, it can be received up to how many days? 14. Oh, this group is good, I tell you. 14 days. The reason for that is it's state law. It's to allow for people who have voted provisionally to make sure they can bring in the appropriate information to clarify their vote with the county clerk. It also allows people who are residents of Illinois, like your college-age children, but going to school somewhere else, to have their ballot come back to the state, people in the military, or people who may be overseas. So to be correct, that would have to say it has to be postmarked on or before Election Day. And what's wrong with D? Early, exactly. You will not be surprised that I give this question often to different groups, and guess what? Not everybody says C. So one of the most important things that we can do is make sure that we share correct information about elections in Illinois when we're asked. And if you don't know the answer, you can check out the League of Women Voters website, or you can check out the county clerk's website. County clerk's information is, of course, the official information for our county. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, for extra credit. Which U.S. age group votes the most? How many votes for A? A, anybody? Oh, we have a few, great. B? Oh, we got a few for B. How about C? Some people like C. And how about D? Oh, most of the people say D. Well, y'all, what do you think? D. Let's check. I got to tell you, this has been true for decades, that the age group 65 and older tends to vote the most frequently. Why? Partly because voting is a habit, and if you start voting earlier, you're much more likely to continue. But notice the graphs. See what's happening in the other age groups? From 2016 up to 2024, these are presidential elections, not midterm, but the same things apply. You see what's happening is the percentage of those other age groups is also increasing. Well, why? One is when states or the federal government have candidates that really engage with voters, more people vote. Secondly, when there are issues involved in a campaign or an election that really are important to people, they tend to vote. Third reason, when states make registration and voting easier and more accessible, more people will vote. And among all the states in the country, Illinois is one of the leaders in making voter registration easy and available for all those who are eligible and making voting easy to do. So give yourselves a hand. You did great on the quiz. Very good. And let's go to the next slide. So here's a big question. Why in the world would you really want to vote in 2026 in the upcoming election?
Save democracy.
Thank you, to save democracy. This is a video made by the rapper Yellopain. He made this video after the 2020 election, but it refers back to the election of Barack Obama in 2008. We want you to take a look at this video. It's a short one, a little over 3 minutes, but watch what happens to Yellopain about halfway through. The title of this video is My Vote Don't Count. Ready? I'm sure that applause was both for Yellopain and our technology experts, right? If you want to see that Yellopain again, it's on the internet. It's my favorite, because what is he really saying? What happened? What decision did he make halfway through? I should have voted in 2010. They didn't tell me to do that. Just like we should vote in 2026 in the midterm election, because we're voting for the folks who make the laws and the decisions that affect our lives. So with that in mind, how are we going to do that? So Murial Jones is going to start by taking us through the first step to an action plan for voting, making sure we're all registered where? At our current address, not where we lived 6 months ago. And I forgot to change my registration, right? So we're not going to do that. Muriel?
So in listening to Ann present, we have some mighty savvy voters here. And so probably a lot of this stuff is redundant and you already know it, but it's part of our script, so we're just going to go ahead, go with it. And also, it's not about just what you know. It's about you sharing it. And so to remind you what you need to share with other people. And so making a plan empowers you and helps you to empower others. The first step is making sure you're registered to vote. All U.S. citizens can register to vote in Illinois. When you're eligible to vote for the first time, you need to register to vote just one time. However, after that, you need to update your registration if you move or change your name. We're going to show you how to check your registration so that you can help others. And so the piece of paper that you received, I need you to take out your cell phone, and I need you to turn that sheet over. There's a QR code on there. Now, of course, you can use the URL up there if you'd like to, but it's just as easy to either use the QR code on the back or use the QR code on the screen. And Ann will take us through. And while you do it on your phone, we're going to also show you how to do it also. So using the QR codes.
Is everyone on this screen?
Yes. Now, it's not going to look like that on your phone. Where it's in the right-hand corner on this, it's going to be right in the middle of your phone. So right at the top, in the middle, it's going to say, am I a registered voter? And then you'll need to fill in the boxes. And then it'll be interesting when you get to your address. Hit submit. And you're going to end up with another screen. And where it says street number, just put your number. And when it goes to street name, you'll have to scroll down to find your street name. Because I was ready to type mine. I was like, okay, what happened? What happened?
It really helps if your street name starts with A.
Yeah, you got to scroll on down. Mine wasn't too far. I'm Bonnie Blair, so. If when you check this, your name is not on, it says that you're not registered, be worried. So you need to contact your representative, not your representative, you need to contact the county clerk's office. They have other ways of checking to make sure that you're registered. But if it says that you are not registered, be concerned. I do have a couple of friends who actually have problems when it came to the primary. So one young lady, when she went to register, they didn't have her address correct. She's lived in the same place for years. Couldn't explain that. Another person, she's married, and for some reason, they had an issue with her last name. So it was just a glitch, but when you get to this page, it says you are registered. It gives us Ann's name, it gives us her age, it gives us all information, and then it gives you district information. And so it gives you your congressional district is 13, where Ann lives. Her state representative, she's in 103 district. All of that information. And you know, the current president wants to have your information. And this just might be why. There's a lot of information on this page. So that now that you're confirmed, make sure you share this with other people. Just tell them to give them your QR code, or give them the sheet with the QR code on it, and just share that information with them. Now that you know that you're registered to vote, now you want to make a plan. And we'll have Terry come up and share that information with you. Woo, woo, woo.
Okay, as Muriel said, now that we know how, did everyone, by the way, get to that state registration so that you could verify whether or not you're registered? You can also use that same site to register online if you haven't registered already. And it's available 24/7. So thank you. So now that you know the first step, the next step is step 2, to be prepared. I'm Terry, and I'm going to try to help us go through a couple of active learning exercises where we can talk about, we're going to focus on issues for one thing. In part because when we go vote, we often are focused on the issues that are important to us, the issues that affect us every single day. And one reason that it's important to know about this is because studies show that beyond a shadow of a doubt, those voters who are informed are the ones who actually go vote. So doing your homework, the work as Ed has pointed out, the work that's necessary for a democracy includes finding out about the issues that are important to you. And so part of what we're looking at here, and you'll see that on your worksheet, it's the second one down, to prepare, and we've got room for you to reflect on and write down the various issues that are important to you in your everyday life. So one of the things that we did, and this was not a scientific poll, but we took a poll of some of our members and came up with a few of these issues that were important to some of the people we hang out with. So you have, cost of living, technology, affordable housing, affordable quality health care, immigration, environmental issues. About 9 different issues is all that we put up here, when in fact there's so many other issues that are of interest to you. A couple things that I want to say about these issues is, note, even though we tried to come down with just easy, simple phrasing, note that every single one of these issues is involved with equity. So the whole idea of these in particular that we chose is we knew it had that equity dimension that underlies everything that's in this. And another reason that we just picked these 9 is because every level of government is involved with these issues. The federal, the state, the county, all involved. So, for example, if I look at technology, it is one of my favorite. I did graduate work in technology and society. And pick out what's in the news right now. Artificial intelligence data centers.
The Urbana Surveillance Oversight Ordinance Fund coming up.
See? All right, thank you.
Urbana City Council, if you want to have to say.
There- And that's making good trouble. We've got a lot of troublemakers in here. Thank you. And the artificial intelligence data centers, for example, the Champaign County board has put together a task force that is taking about a year examination of the zoning rules having to do with AI centers. At the state level, the Illinois legislature does have a piece of legislation. They have not put it up for a vote yet, possibly in the fall. It's called the Power Act, P-O-W-E-R. And what the Power Act does is it requires new data centers to pay for their own energy costs. It requires them to obtain energy from renewable resources, and it prohibits data centers from shifting costs to residents. The other level at which data centers are of interest to us is that big environmental level. So because it's environmental, we're talking about issues such as energy, which crosses state lines, and the water that's needed to keep AI data centers cool. And as you know, water crosses state lines. As a consequence, policy having to do with data centers has a big view if you're looking at it from the federal perspective, which looks at all of the states. So an issue such as technology and data centers is applicable to all of the people we're voting for, the county, the state, the federal level. So when you're thinking about your issues, you have a lot of different facets of an issue that would be of interest to you. So here's what we can do. If you can take about 30 seconds right now and fill in those blanks of the issues, reflect, fill in those blanks about the issues that are of interest to you, because that might help you focus when we go to our next part. So there's about 5 more seconds. And then how about, since we do have a little time, how about if you turn to your neighbor or people around you and share with each other the issues that are of interest to you? Fifteen more seconds. Okay, I will. 5 more seconds. Okie doke. We're on to our next part. So our next slide, please. So your next question probably is, now that you have a sense of the issues that kind of turn you on, you want to see if you can connect the dots of your issues and why you think they're important, what policy aspects you're interested in. You want to connect those dots to candidates. How do you find out about candidate information? Well, probably you need to go, as Ed said, to a trusted source. One of the trusted sources that's out there are the League's Candidate Guide. Have people here used the Candidate Guide before? Raise your hand. It's been around, all right, thank you. It's been around for several years, and this is the landing page for it. You can see the league's logo at the top. That's one way that you know that you're on the correct page. And this is as it says here, personalized voting information. What makes it personalized is that you fill in over on the other side here, you fill in you enter your address to get started, your street address. And what the database does then is it pulls up the candidates that are on your ballot for your precinct, your community. So you won't be wading through all candidates, even if they're not on your ballot. You'll only see the candidates that are on your ballot. And the League of Women Voters collects this information by contacting all of the candidates, asking them to complete this profile online. So because it's online, this is also accessible to you 24/7. And there are some candidates who decide not to fill out their profile, and you'll see that online, but otherwise, it'll be available for you. And there are many questions that are asked, such as every candidate who receives this is asked, what is the importance of this office for your community? What past experiences will you bring to the office? What are the most pressing issues facing your constituents? And is there anything else you want the voters to know? Also, on that site with the candidates, they have to fill out their contacts. So when you go to that candidate profile, you can see contact information, both their email as well as their website. So you can click on their website where they'll have more information about their issues, their email, their Facebook, Twitter URL, Instagram URL, YouTube, and their mailing address. So this candidate guide is a robust resource, trusted, reliable, that you can use. It is nonpartisan, and I'd have to say that as candidates fill this out, part of the agreement that they sign up for is a candidate's participation in this candidate guide does not constitute an endorsement by the League. And this resource is purely an educational activity. No candidate may use the name of the League in any manner. So that's basically one way that you can get to this trusted, reliable candidate information for those candidates that are going to be on your specific ballot. All right, I think we can go on to step 3. Oh, you know one thing I needed to add that I didn't? The candidate information for the November 3 ballot is not going to be available until September 24th because September 24th is the first day of early voting. And so it doesn't go up until, so when you go to, if you were to go to the candidate guide right now, which is the last QR code on your worksheet here for the candidate guide, if you were to go now, if you want to practice going, you could, you will see various and sundry ways to get to the state site that you've already been to for checking your voter registration and or helping someone else vote, register to vote online. Thank you.
So we've talked about making sure that you're registered. We've talked about making sure that you know the issues and connecting them to someone who's running. And so now we want to talk about you actually voting. And we know that you have 3 ways of voting in Illinois. You can either vote by mail, you can do early voting, or you can go, as some people still want to go on election day and make sure that they do their ballot on election day. I used to be like that, but I do early voting now. So anyway, just so we have a feel of who's in the room. How many people like to, raise your hands, how many people like to vote by mail? Okay, almost half. How many people like to vote early? Okay. And then how many people prefer to vote on election day? A smaller percentage, but I do understand it. I certainly understand it. And then we know that life may change some things, and we may have to change that. But those are your preferences, so that's wonderful. And so let's say, it says any registered voter can request a mail ballot. And I think Terry just told us, when does early voting start? And so you can also then request your ballot. And so you can request with the county clerk a ballot, they will send it to you, and then you can vote by mail if that's what you choose to do. The best way to return your mail ballot is to use one of our county's secure drop boxes. There are 11 throughout the county and one more at the clerk's office. They are available 24/7 until 7 o'clock on election day.
I don't think the clerk's office has been installed yet.
Say the more.
At the new clerk's
They're
office.
accepting ballots at
Oh,
the
but they
clerk's
don't have a
office.
yellow box yet.
They don't have a box, but if you go into the clerk's office inside the building, there is a way to have your mail ballot accepted.
Okay.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because probably most people here know, because we have savvy voters here, but Brook and Center is no longer where we vote.
But I think they still have the drop box.
Yeah, right, that's true.
You can still use it as your,
True. So you can go there to the drop box, but you can't go there to, let's see. Mail ballots must be postmarked on or before election day. Ed had already kind of shared that with us to make sure. It's a suggestion that maybe you go in and ask them to postmark it in front of you. Yes?
is that if, I'm not very trusting of the post office, quite frankly, they're not my friend.
Okay.
Is that if you do put it in the post office, go back and check the status to see that your ballot's been received.
Okay.
That's how you know.
Can track it. For the 2026 primary, Illinois County Clerk recommends that you mail your ballot at least a week before Election Day or use one of those trustee drop boxes. This is true in every state. In terms of postmarking, we know that they don't postmark it the day you turn it in. It may be postmarked 2 or 3 days later. So you want to make sure that if you take it to the mailbox, I would suggest, or they suggest that you have it postmarked in front of you, or track it once you go ahead and mail it. If you decide to mail in person, or if you decide to vote in person, you can vote at any location that is available. It used to be you had to go to your district polling place. It's no longer that place. We have universal voting places, and so that you can go any place that is open. Yes, you can register when you go to vote during early voting on an election day in Illinois. In our country, you can do this at any open voting location. To register and vote on the same day, which is called grace period registration, bring your current ID and something with your name and current address from the last 30 days. It doesn't have to be a physical piece of paper. If it's something on your phone, you can pull it up on your phone. If it has your current address on it, you're able to use that. Encourage others to make a plan as well. What will you do to help encourage people to make that plan? Maybe have them post voting information on your social media. We all have social media pages. And so maybe put something on there in terms of encouraging people to vote. Hold a voting session, voting information session at your home. We're talking about having current information, having accurate information. Maybe pull up that candidate guide and just have some friends around and let's talk about who's running for office. Make sure your eligible children or kids are registered. We do know if you're 17 and you will be 18 before the election, you can register to vote. And so make sure that you have a child or you have a relative who may not be registered. Make sure you encourage them to register. Invite friends and neighbors to go with you to vote. And then go out for lunch or coffee, just have some suggestions. And so I know we're pressed for time, so I don't know if we have enough time to have that. We do? All righty. So we're going to ask the audience to chat for 30 seconds with their neighbor. What is your plan? What do you plan to do? Do you plan to vote in person? How are you going to encourage other people to vote? So we give you about 30 seconds, and go ahead.
Make some notes at the bottom of their page about what they're going to do.
Okay.
And then I'll take over.
All right.
Closer to you, so then the live stream can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No,
Would anyone like to share some of the ideas that you, maybe one or two people can share with us what their plan is? Yes, ma'am.
Being an election judge gives me the opportunity to use my vote in cases of technical issues.
So one of the suggestions that we had is using, say that one more time for us, a little louder.
As an election judge, I can use my voting when we have technical issues, when we need to be able to test something, but in real life.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Anyone else want to share how they might, what their plan of action is or what they plan to do? Well, why don't you jot down on the piece of paper that we gave you some of those ideas that you may have so that you can share them with your family, with your friends. And then the last thing we wanted to say, or I wanted to say, is now that you have your own personal plan and your own personal document and you know what to do, the important thing is to do it. And so we know that you will, and I'll pass it on off to Ann.
Thank you, Muriel. So you've all got your own plan, and let's segue back not only to what Ed said earlier, but what Pastor Thomas said yesterday, for those of you who were here for the keynote. If you remember what Pastor Thomas said, good trouble, which is a great slogan and it fits well on buttons, and we're glad for that. But good trouble is not the end of the road. Good trouble is a strategy to get beyond that, to do the things that matter, to build a good society for all of us. So as John Lewis said, and I think Marcy read this quote right at the beginning, the vote is precious. It's almost sacred. It is the most powerful nonviolent tool or instrument that we have in a democratic society. But here's the important part. We must use it. That's the critical thing. And my suspicion is everyone in this room will be doing that, and chances are you're going to gather others to help you help them vote as well. But here's the final reminder about elections. Do you all agree with that? Yeah. Elections are not determined by what the pundits on TV say. They are not determined by the posts we see flying past us on social media. The only thing that determines the outcome of an election is those who show up. Could I see the hands of everyone who plans to show up? Great. Thank you all, and go take action. We'll bring Ed back. Thanks, everybody. We've got about 8 minutes or 9 minutes for questions. So we've got everybody up here, and we're glad to try to answer any questions you might have. We have 2 people who are carrying mics around, or will be in just a moment, and we'll be glad to come up and see what your questions are. Go ahead, Denise. Oh, you got some up there. 12 minutes. Woo! Okay. That's great.
I have a question. There's a lot of information here for people that have cell phones and computers, but I know a couple people that don't have that. Can they just register at the clerk's office, or what do they do? There's people out there, they don't have access.
Yep.
Yes, you can register to vote at the clerk's office. We use a one-page paper registration form, and that's available to be used by anyone in our county, in fact, anyone in the state, and the clerk's office can give you one to fill out while you're there. Another option is to go to the League of Women Voters, and at any of our public events, such as right now in the lobby out there, we have a table where we have the paper registration forms, and all someone has to do is walk up. They can fill out the registration form in 3 minutes. Trust me, it is 3. We've tested that, unless you really write slowly, but it really is 3 minutes. And we take those forms back to the county clerk's office and turn them in. Does that help? Great.
Then also a CU Day in the Park. There'll be, I know the league will be out there. There'll be other entities that are out there. So most of the civic or most of the social community events will have someone with the table, and they'll be able to register people to vote.
Yes. Also tomorrow at the Resource Fair back at the Champaign Public Library from 6 to 8. And I think, Bernice, we have a question way up and
I've
back.
got-
You got her? Okay.
I've got a microphone here. So my question is, so we need judges from both parties, and so how do we encourage okay, so we need to encourage, in order to have enough polling places open, we have to have enough judges from both parties. So how do you propose that we talk to our neighbors and say, could you be an election judge? Because I know you vote different than I do.
That's a great question, and it is true that the county clerk always wants more judges. Even if the clerk's office had the correct number today, life happens, and people will get sick, kids will get sick, and a judge ready to go may not be able to do that. What I normally do is I just say, we really need people to be election judges. It's a civic responsibility, and it's great because you're helping everyone in the community. Being an election judge is volunteer. You are paid for it, by the way. Anybody know how much? $220 on election day, $15 an hour if you're a judge during early voting. So there are lots of ways. You do need to sign up to be an election judge, which you can do on the county clerk's website. There is training, and there is both hands-on and online training that's provided by the clerk. Would that help? Just give them a few facts. And if you know someone who has been an election judge, say, my friend so-and-so has been that, and they found it to be an extremely rewarding experience. Okay? We have a question in the back.
Hi, my name is Ms. Hart, and I am very appreciative of this panel and all the information that you shared today. I was wondering if you do have, or do you plan to have in the future, a mobile unit that goes around and aggressively gets people registered to vote? I'm more of a go-getter, and I think that we need a mobile unit to aggressively go into areas, especially the ones that may not have the opportunity or the cell phones or the technology, but they are our valuable citizens that are in need of resources, and their voices need to be heard. Is there any way that we can get that going? A mobile unit that goes around to town and signs up thousands of people every day.
Ms. Hart, thank you. I've asked Ms. Muriel here to write down your suggestion, and when we're done here in a few minutes, could you come up to the table so we can get some contact information to make sure we can follow up on your suggestion? Would that be all right? Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, and I double down on that suggestion. But I'm curious, how would the panel suggest people find out about donations? Like, what candidates get donations from where?
What is that darn website? There is, what is it? Sunshine, Illinois. There are a couple of, well, two things. There are a couple of websites that do that work regularly. I don't happen to remember the URLs right now, but I'll see if I can get those, and we'll put it on the league website. The other thing is the league's candidate guide. Once the candidates fill out their profiles, their major financial contributors are added to those profiles. So what I would suggest everybody do is check out the league's candidate guide after September 24th, and some of that financial information will be available. But I'll see if I can find those exact websites. Ed, do you happen to recall what those are?
The Sunshine one is, I see somebody about to shout out. IllinoisSunshine.org. Thank you, thank you, thank you, yay. Yeah.
It takes a village, it takes a village. Okay, we can take about 2 more questions. Who's got one?
So are the voter profiles available all across the state or just locally in Champaign, in other words?
Are the voter, which files?
So all the information about candidates,
Oh,
does that work across the entire state or just for Champaign
the
County?
most League of Women Voters chapters in Illinois, and there are about 40, all put out the candidate guides that are appropriate for their county. So what you would want to do is go to the platform we use, which is called vote411.org. Look up Illinois and look up the county. And that would give you the league's information that are appropriate for voters in that county. Does that help? Great. That's vote411.org is the platform. Okay? Thank you.
Is there a plan for what to do if someone representing the government comes to collect our ballots after they've been sent in?
That's to you.
I will tell you that that is one of the things that our legal team is already working on and game planning, both with state officials and local officials, as well as with other legal organizations and civil rights organizations. There is no reason for the federal government to get involved in vote counting, in vote tabulation, or in seizing the ballots of anybody, and will be, along with others, prepared to fight that. In part, that will be a legal battle. But I want to say the other thing is that, I think one of the things about the we the people I was trying to underscore is we have to make it so it is radioactive for anybody to support this federal government doing that. There cannot be, I just want to say this, there can't be anybody who runs for, forgive me, I'm going to use an old dated phrase, there can't be anybody who runs for dog catcher who doesn't get asked the question sometime in the next few weeks, do you support the federal government seizing ballots afterwards? People have to be on the record and they have to be called for account if the White House tries to do that.
Thank you very much for the question. And Ed, thank you for your response. We appreciate knowing that. Well, I think we have reached the end of our time. I want to thank all of you for your active participation in what we talked about this afternoon and for adding things in that we might have forgotten, so we appreciate that. We'll be here for a few more minutes and they will be resetting for the next panel, which is a town hall between the mayors of Champaign and Urbana and Rantoul. If you want to stay for that, you're certainly welcome to stay. If you want to go out and stretch for a minute and come back, that's perfectly okay too. Pardon?